Hello, I have received a couple of emails in regards to lecture 9, so I wanted to create this video, especially for those of you who had difficulties with this lecture and those of you who were not able to make it last Friday. Okay, so let's just start with the steps to create a function. As I explained in class, the best way to do it is to write it, to test it, to save it, and then to call it. Please note that you could only have one function per file, and then the first word in the function should be the word function. Anything above it could only be in text, as we have over here in green. So let's start with the first step, to write it. So I'm gonna go over problems 1 and problem 5 in your homework. Okay? So let's start with problem 1. So for problem 1, notice that what we have to do is evaluate the function y for 3 different sets of x's. Okay, so we're gonna test it. We're gonna write it first. So we're gonna say x is equal. So the first one is gonna be negative 2.5, and then y is evaluated to be negative 0.2 times x to the 4th plus exponent minus 0.5 times x to the 3rd plus 7 times x to the 2nd. Now we're gonna test it. So first we wrote it, and then we're gonna test it. So we run the section. Notice what we get a value. So we're gonna test it for the second sample that we have, which is 3. We're gonna run it. Notice that we get a value once again. And the third one is a vector that goes from negative 3 to 4 every 0.5. So we write the vector and we test it again. Notice that in this case, it's telling us that we have to use vector notation because x is set as a vector. So we go back, put a dot before here, a dot before the multiplication, and a dot before the power. Oh, what did I miss? Oh, that before the cubic. We run it, and notice that we get a result. So we have successfully tested it for the 3 inputs that we have. So now we go and hide over here. We indicate which one is going to be the input and which one is going to be the output. The one that is input, once again, we hide. And now we are going to save the function. To save the function, we type the word function, and then we write the number of the outputs. In this case, the output is going to be y. And then we name on the function. So it's asking us to call it fun91, and then parentheses, and the input is going to be x. Notice that we have it in blue, therefore we have to finish it. Now we have it. What we're going to do, so after you set up the function, now we save it. We're going to save it in your homework files. And you save it exactly. Notice that the name that it has, the number that you put over here is exactly how you have over here. Make sure not to change it. You click save. And now to run it, to call it, we could call it from the command window. However, before you do that, you gotta ensure that the address that you have it, where you saved it, is exactly the address of the current window, which is not what we have. Notice that it has to be Homework Engineering 240. So once we have made them exactly the same, so notice that this has to be exactly the same as this. Now we could call it. How do we call it? As I said, simply go to the command window and simply say fun, the name of the function, and then open parentheses. If the function shows up, it means that it's properly saved and you could call it. Now you could enter negative 2.5 and it works. Now, how do I want it in your homework? In your homework, you should have a file. So we create another one for your assignments, for your homework assignments. So we set it up in the same way. So this is gonna be problem 1. And in this one you have 3 inputs. So you set x is equal to negative 2.5. And notice that I want the variable to be called problem191. And we're gonna call it. We're gonna simply call the function 91. Notice that it shows up again. And we call it for this value of x. And since we have it 3 times, we're gonna do it 3 times. We're just gonna simply change the variable x. And this is gonna be problem. This one is gonna be for positive 3. And this is gonna be problem 2. And this one is gonna be exactly for the vector. Since we tested exactly these 3 values for x, that you should not have any issue. So once again, we run it. And notice that we get the response that you have for problem 1, 2, and 3. I forgot to change the name of this one. However, so to review, whenever you create a function, please don't start with the word function. Always write it, test it with the information that you have, save it, and then call it. Okay? So let's try now, for example, problem 5. Okay? So we're gonna go to another window. And in this case, we have to calculate the value of the stresses using the values that are given. So once again, we provide a value. So we have, so this is sigma xx, and let's just start with 190, sigma yy 145, then you do tau xy, so this is for 110. Okay, and now notice that we're gonna find that sigma max according to the equation. So according to the equation, we have xx plus x y divided by 2 plus, and then we have a square root, and then the inside here we have sigma xx, sorry, Adelaide, and then minus sigma yy, and this is so we need an extra parentheses to ensure that, so this is this whole thing to the second power plus tau xy, oops, tau xy to the second power. We double check we have the correct number of parentheses. So this parentheses is for the square, this parenthesis for the division, and then notice that we have, this is the maximum. We do the same process for the minimum. We just need to change the plus to a minus. Once again, we wrote it. Now we're gonna test it with these 3 values. And we get the solution for the maximum and the minimum. Notice that this is not a vector, so there is, you could go and change, add the 3 other results, and you will be able to test it again. So now let's save it. To save it, once again, we identified the inputs. So these 3 values are the inputs. This is an input, this is an input, and this is an input. These 2 are going to be outputs, and this one is also going to be an output. Notice now we have to write the name of the function, and it says that we write it as s max s min. So those are the outputs. Oh, forgot the word function. That should have been the first thing. So x max and x min. So I use this too because these are the ones that are how I wrote my function. And then the name of the function is going to be principal stress. And then my inputs are going to be s xx, s yy, and tau xy. Okay, so always double check the outputs. Whatever you wrote over here, notice how it's highlighted here. It has to be defined here. Whatever is defined here. And then the inputs should be used inside of here. However, they should not be defined. Remember always to hide this. And then a function, we finish it. So now we have it. We save it. Notice once again, it's going to be in the homework folder, and it's going to be called principal stress, exactly how we spelled it over here. Remember, when you have a function, you cannot execute or run a function. Notice that if you try to do this, it doesn't work. You could only call a function. To call a function, once again, you go to the command window and simply write the name of it. And then you put the information. So in this case will be 190, 145, 110. However, notice that only one output is provided, even though we have two. So remember, to have two outputs, you actually have to say S max S. So you have to ask for two. If you had two outputs, you ask for two. If you have three, ask for three, and so on and so forth. You once again enter the value. And then run. Notice that you get the two values. If you were doing it in your homework, once again, you go to your problem. So we are under problem 5. So you enter the desired value, 6xx. It's going to be 190. SYY. It's going to be 145. And tau xy is going to be 110. So when you call it, once again, you say you have to ask for two outputs. So S maximum, S minimum, and then the name of the function as you wrote it, principal stress, and then the input. Oops, I'm close parentheses. You run it. Now notice that the two values are provided. Please keep in mind when you are writing functions, it's about being consistent. If you follow the 4 steps that I gave you, you should not have any issues writing functions. Always write it, test it, save it, and then finally call it. Please, if you have any issues, make sure that you email me with your questions. I'll be happy to answer them at my earliest convenience. Have a great break.